In 1976, York Archaeology began a 5-year-long excavation at the Coppergate Centre, where the York Viking Centre is today. They found 20,000 individual objects in 40,000 archaeological contexts. They found thousands of Roman and medieval roof tiles, 250,000 pieces of pottery, and sieved through several tons of soil. So the question is, where do all the finds go?
Most museums, only 10% of their collection is on display. Give or take. Well, my name is Sarah Shepherd. I currently work here at DIG, part of the York group. I started off kind of my career in conservation. My undergrad is a Bachelor in Cultural Heritage Conservation, but I recently completed an MA in Stained Glass Conservation and Heritage Management at the University of York.
Well, my name is Fiona. I work for York Archaeology. I'm what you'd call an interactive, hence the costume, because I am in a customer-facing role. I'm there to actually interpret what the customer is seeing, what the visitors are seeing when they're looking at the artefacts in museums that we run. I mean, obviously, when we're finding them, we obviously have to work out what they are, what they're made of, what they do, how people use them. But then we can actually put the picture together about how people used to live. We're looking at the cataloguing of it. We are looking at being able to work out what to do with it, how to treat it, because different materials obviously need different processes.
Separate it into things like bulk finds or anything that could be significant, important, or need extra care. Once you've found something, say a piece of glass, it would really depend on how significant it is. So once you've cared for it, you clean it up, make it look beautiful if that's what the requirement is. And then depending on what the long-term goal is, you could put that on display in, say, a museum or a university gallery or on site, if that's possible. You could probably, if it's not that significant, select some bits for a handling collection in a museum, such as we've got here at DIG, or you could put it into warehouse storage, which is generally where a lot of finds go.
We've got university stores, we've got collections in museums, we've got reserve collections, so you'll find that, in terms of York Archaeology, we have got a finds department. Those things will be kept, they can be revisited if archaeological practices alter. Everything is catalogued, so a bit like a library, we can then find those things again. So if we may have half of something and the rest is trapped under the buildings, the next door buildings from a dig, if those things are found, they can be married up with the things that are already there. So that cataloguing system is essential. But those other objects are always there in that almost a waiting game, really, that we know they're there. They might not immediately be seen, but they are also there for study if people want to come and visit.
So quite often with bulk finds you'll have so many, there's not really much you can do with them. Putting them in storage is not exactly the best option. What are you storing them for? For example, in the Coppergate dig in the 1980s, they started selling oyster shells because they had so many. Generally, it is one way to raise funds for your collection. It is a way to ensure that you can care for the other things that are quite important. It does raise a little bit of money. I think it's one of the better ways to do it than just throwing things away. Obviously, throwing things away doesn't help anybody. And if you can sell something to somebody who will treasure that thing forever, why not? Somebody has an oyster shell that was handled by a Viking 1,000 years ago, probably sitting on their bookshelf somewhere that they bought when they were, 10 years old, 1980. And those kind of things you can use for handling collections, but obviously there's a limit to how many oyster shells you could have in a handling collection, and 700,000 is quite a lot. In terms of museum collections, it's not necessarily best practice, but best practice is always going through something first to determine what is important and what's not.
And then we're looking at whether or not it's going to go on display, whether or not it can be, although it sounds really awful, designated for destruction, where we're looking at how those things are constructed. We're actually almost invasive procedures to look at these things. But that then tells us how these things are made. we can then look at doing the experimental archaeology, we can look at doing the reverse engineering and actually working out how something is constructed, which then gives us a huge idea about how people are crafting, how they are making things.
So here at Dig we've got a stratigraphy wall, and the stratigraphy wall includes layers, examples of things that you would find in the time periods that would pop up. And quite a few of the things in there are like original artifacts, but the things that aren't significant, they're not important, there really isn't any other use for them. And putting them in this wall does alter them, it can cause some damage. Obviously they are touched by thousands of people every year, but in my opinion, it's a better life for them than sitting in a box somewhere.